There's a place He comes to me. Though I'm blind, He helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see Him face to face.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Face to Face, we'll be in the book of Revelation. So grab your Bibles and let's get started. If you want to hear this complete message in its entirety, go to yourneighborhoodchurch.com, where you can download Your Neighborhood Church app at the App Store. And then there's this whole part of Elijah never dying, where Elijah, he didn't die a natural death, where Elijah was taken up in a fiery chariot while he was still alive. And then people will quote Hebrews chapter 9:27, where it says that it's appointed for men to die once. So some people think that Elijah, he's going to have to come back and he's going to have to die once, which leads us to what some people's choice for the second witness is. And their second witness, they would say, is Enoch. Because in Genesis 5:21, we're told that Enoch, that he didn't die either. And it says in 5:24 of Genesis, it says, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. So Enoch, too, he was raptured, or he was what they called translated. And though there's a lot of people who believe that these two witnesses will be Elijah and Enoch, and it's because they didn't die natural deaths. But for those people who don't believe it will be Enoch, they tend to believe that the other witness will be Moses. And that's because of the type of miracles that are here in the plagues that these witnesses perform, and where they can do it as often as they wish. Those are those things like turning water into blood and striking the earth with all these plagues. And that's exactly what Moses did in Egypt. And you do see both of these men, Elijah and Moses, you see them both speaking with Jesus at his transfiguration. And you do see there that whatever type of body Elijah had there, well, Moses, he had the same type of body there too. And then there's this really interesting comment that you can read in the book of Jude in verse 9, where it says that there was this dispute over Moses' body between Michael the archangel and the devil. And so I kind of think it kind of goes along what it says about Elijah in Malachi, where it says to turn the children's heart back to their fathers and the father's heart back to the children, that who would not be better to turn their hearts back to the God, where Moses, he actually represented God to the children of Israel. And then they'll say that Elijah, he represents, the prophets, and Moses, that he represents the law. Okay, so this is what I believe happens, that they do this for the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, where they're standing outside the temple doors, and they're ministering to these Jews that are coming from all over the world to sacrifice at this new temple. And then we're told in verse 7, when they finish their testimony, and so when their job is finished, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them and overcome them and kill them. All right, so here we have the first mention of the beast, and that's the same person who we call the Antichrist. And the name, the beast, it will be mentioned, and we'll read 36 times in the book of Revelation. And this beast, he is not allowed to kill these two witnesses until they're finished with their ministries. Because until they're finished, these two men are untouchable and nothing can stop them. But God, he's not going to leave him on this earth any longer than he has to. Because you have to realize, these guys, their job is really hard. And they're pretty much alone, and they're against the whole world. And I kind of believe it's kind of the same way for us, that until God is finished with us, until we have finished our ministries in serving the Lord, the world, they can't really hurt us. That in a way, we're also untouchable. And so now, when this beast comes against them and kills them, the world, they think the beast is a hero. And they think that he's won. And it'll be just like what they're going to sing over in Revelation 13:4. They'll be singing, who is like the beast and who is able to make war with him? Oh, he won. He's our hero. And so the whole world, they're rejoicing over the killing of these two prophets of God because they hated him so much. And because of that, they won't even give them a proper burial. And in Israel, among the Jews and the Arabs, they always bury a body the same day that a person dies. They do it within 24 hours, and because that's a sign of respect. But they dishonor these men so badly, they just leave their bodies there on the street, and they leave them there laying and rotting for these 3.5 days. And this is the only place in Revelation where you see any rejoicing on the earth or anywhere during this whole 7-year period. And all of this is happening in downtown Jerusalem. And the reason we know it's Jerusalem is because we're told it's where the Lord was crucified. But here, Jerusalem, it's been given a new name. And its new name is Sodom, which means that these people, they are perverted, immoral people. And then it calls them Egypt, which means they're full of idolatry and oppression and slavery. And so for that whole 3.5 days, their bodies are laying there, and the whole world is watching. And it's not just the Jews watching in Jerusalem, but it's the whole world, all the nations, because these witnesses, they were hated by everyone. And the reason is because the world hates God, and the world hates his Christ. And so they also hate his witnesses. And just to let you know and to be clear, if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, they also hate you. And the world here is just so happy because the world, they're blaming these two men for all their torment because of all of their own disobedience and their rebellion against God. And so now they start this new holiday, and everybody's sending gifts to each other. And this holiday, it's bigger than Christmas. In all of the religions, they join in it because this is very exciting. And I don't know what they call it, but it's kind of Kill a Prophet Day. And they're all so in love with the beast here. He is their hero. And so the whole world, they're sitting there and they're watching this on their iPhones. And some of you are watching it on your Androids. And they're traveling from all over the world just to get that selfie picture with the dead bodies in the background. And as the whole world is watching, the breath of life from God enters them. And then they stand up on their feet. And then the whole world goes from having this great joy to great fear and being absolutely terrified. And then they hear this voice that says, "Come up here." And it looks just like Jesus when he ascended to heaven. They're going up into this cloud. And I'm going to guess that it's going to be the same way when the rapture comes, that we'll hear that same "come up here," because that's the same words that John heard in chapter 4, "come up here." And so now the world's going to be thinking, oh no, it's happening again. And now they're going to be remembering when all those Christians disappeared from the world. And they see that these men who have been testifying about the same Jesus that all the Christians talked about, and now they're coming to life and they're being raptured right in front of them. And now the whole world, they find themselves on the wrong side of God again and being an enemy to the only real God. But for them to have fear, it's a good thing because this fear can help them to change their minds. So this is a wake-up call. And I believe that the witness of these two prophets was very, very profitable because right after this scene is when I believe the Antichrist, he goes into that temple and he demands to be worshiped God. And that it's because of these two witnesses, and because he's been witnessing to all these Jews in Jerusalem, that they finally figure out that they have been deceived by this Antichrist. And now they know where to flee because they're gonna know all the things that have been written in Matthew 24 to not go down and get your coat. Just get out of here. Just go. And then after these two witnesses are ascended, there's this earthquake. And you see that there's 1/10 of the city of Jerusalem is destroyed and 7,000 are killed. And so even in this, you see that God has his great mercy, that it's only 1/10 of the city. It's not the whole city being destroyed. And only 7,000 die. It's not everyone. And we don't know who these 7,000 are. Maybe they were people that were trying to kill those prophets or work for the Antichrist. We don't know. But now you see that the whole world, they grudgingly give glory to the God of heaven because they all know that this is from God. And so now we end with that the second woe has passed. And so next week, We're going to start the third wool, which is the blowing of the seven trumpets. Okay, so last week we had this intermission between the blowing of the sixth trumpet and the seventh trumpet, where the Bible started describing some of the players in this last day scenario. And we learned about this huge angel that resembled Jesus Christ. And then we were told about these two witnesses and their ministries to the Jews that they held in front of the Antichrist rebuilt temple. So now in chapter 11, verse 15, we hear that the seventh trumpet has been blown. And before we see this pouring out of the seven bowl judgments, we're introduced to all these different characters, all these players behind the scenes. And so we're going to learn what's been going on in the spiritual realm ever since the Garden of Eden and before the creation. Because in this history of the earth, there is this reality, a reality that we don't see. And we wouldn't know anything about it unless we were told about it. And so if you remember, there was a silence at the beginning of the opening of the seven seals. But now in heaven, it's loud again. And it says there are loud voices in heaven, and what they're saying is that the world is the Lord's again. And from now on, it'll always be Christ's reign forever and ever. And I have these 24 elders again, and they're all worshiping, but now they're on their faces, and they're all giving thanks. And when I read their praise here, what I notice is that God here, he's ready to reward his people. And it says it's all his prophets and all his saints. And the way it reads, it sounds like the people on earth, that they were already angry with God before his wrath was ever poured out on the earth in any type of judgment. That they were already discontent with God and they were mad because they wanted to have the world their way. So they rebelled. And they wouldn't walk with him, and they wouldn't go along with God's plan. But God, he wanted them to. And so this is not because God didn't love them, because he did, and he does. But it's time now for God to correct them. And so all of this wrath is a correction to their rebellion. And here it tells us that these rebels, that they were destroying God's earth. And that's exactly what it says here that God is doing. He's saying that he should destroy those who destroy the earth. And sometimes I think that we can find ourselves discontent with God's plans for our lives. And we can be angry at God because he didn't allow us to have things our way. And it's not because we ever meant it to be that way. We just became discontent where things didn't turn out the way that we wanted them to. And so we find ourselves where we don't walk with him or in his plans. And we try to make just our own plans where we try to get him to bless our own ways, our own plans, what we think would be good for our lives. But as believers, I don't think God pours out his wrath on us like he's doing here on the world, but that he will always try to correct us because God, he always wants our best. You've been listening to Face to Face. Face to Face on this radio station has been provided by Your Neighborhood Church. If you want to help support Face to Face and put this program on other stations just like yours, you can contact us at yourneighborhoodchurch.com or write Your Neighborhood Church, P.O. Box 500, Romeo, Michigan 48065.
There's a place he comes to me, though I'm blind, he helps me see, though I see dimly. In this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
Tune in again tomorrow at this same time as we continue to go through the Bible.